Hola Mis Amores, my name is Nori Ponso. I help millennial women feeling stuck get out of their heads and overcome their paralysis by getting to know themselves. If we're meeting for the first time, welcome to today's video. I'm very excited because I'm going to be sharing with you 3 reasons why it is so hard to be uncomfortably honest with ourselves and what you can do about this. I wanted to talk about this topic because it came up in one of the podcast episodes I recently released with my guest, Kelly Augustine. Kelly and I talked about what it was like for her to overcome divorce and come victorious on the other side. So, in our conversation, we talked a lot about honesty. And I was really moved with the conversation that we had. And I felt intrigued and ready to talk a little bit more because I think it's a topic that we don't talk about often. And I wanted to address it in today's video. So, most people aren't honest with themselves, even the ones that think that they are. I remember the first time I realized that I wasn't honest with myself and what it meant to be honest with myself. I had asked some of my friends and colleagues to complete this email for me, to answer an email for me. And one of the questions I asked them was, what were the things that they could not count on me for? What would they consider to be my weaknesses? And I was very surprised because one of the things that came up was punctuality. A lot of the people I sent this email to came back and said that they didn't really think I was someone that they can rely on to be on time. Now, this was a shocker to me because I felt like I was always on time. I felt like I always was there, at least early sometimes. I felt like I did my best to be on time. But when I looked at the data, when I looked at what people said to me, it turned out that I wasn't right. It turned out not only was I barely on time, but I was barely early and people thought that I was gonna be late. So that was an eye opener for me and it made me realize like you're not being honest with yourself. Like you think you're this thing, but actually it turns out that you are not that thing. And I understood that one of the reasons why I ran away from honesty with myself in that way is because it can be really painful. It can be painful to acknowledge that you are the reason why things are happening in a certain way. It can be painful to realize that you played a role all along in your life, that you've been busy thinking it was other people, but in reality it was you. Or at the very least, you had something to do with it. So it could be really painful for people to start to be uncomfortably honest with themselves because in order to be uncomfortably honest with yourself you have to be willing to take on the accountability and to accept the pain that may come out of doing that digging and doing that honest work that you're doing. And it's not an easy thing to do because a lot of us find comfort in our lies and we get so good at these lies that we start believing them, and the more we believe our lies the more we think that we are a certain way, but we're really not that way at all. We think so highly of ourselves. We think that we are basically perfect in a way. And that's why we want to change everyone around us to be more like us because we think that we are the way things are supposed to be because we think we are the way that's right and they are the way that's wrong. But part of being uncomfortably honest with yourself is realizing that everyone has their own way of being. Everyone in a way is right and everyone in a way is wrong as well. Is wrong if what they're looking for is not what you're looking for, and is right if what they're looking for is what you're looking for. So it really is about what is it that you want out of life? What is it that you're seeking in your own journey? And what can you do to get there? It's not really about what each person is doing with their own journeys because you can't control them. They can only control themselves, and you can only control yourself. So you have to be really aware of that and at least willing to see that. And uncomfortable honesty is uncomfortable for a reason. And as humans, we are designed to want to run away of all the things that make us uncomfortable. That's why you don't see people just randomly touching hot pots out the oven, or that's why people don't like to be under the sun, don't really like to be outside. That's why some people that don't like the cold, like me, for example, move to places that are warmer, is because we don't want to be uncomfortable. We don't want to be in a space where we feel like I shouldn't be this way. And our desire to run away from comfort or to comfort and from discomfort usually keeps us stuck. It keeps us from growing because you have to be able to push yourself spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and physically in order to grow. The first time I ran a marathon, I would have never imagined I could run a marathon or even two, which is what I ended up doing. But it was really challenging for me to run that marathon because I had to learn how to run like a marathoner. I had to learn to run every single week. I had to do one run that was like almost 20 miles or something like that before the race. And I had never done any of those things, but I pushed myself. And it took a lot of mental work to do this because At times it was really cold and I didn't want to run outside. But I knew that if I didn't run outside, I wasn't able to reach my goal of finishing that marathon. So it's really important that you understand that it takes a lot of stretching. It takes mental stretching, physical stretching, spiritual stretching for you to be able to grow. And the more you want to stay comfortable, the more you're not able to grow. There's so many times where I might feel a little stuck in my life, or I might feel like, can I really accomplish this, right? Those questions might come up. And I remind myself that you ran 2 marathons and countless half marathons. You can accomplish anything you set your mind to. And if I didn't have that experience, maybe self doubt will win in those battles, right? But it doesn't, because I know that I have done this and I can do it over and over again should I choose to do it. And that's what can come out of you being uncomfortably honest with yourself and about you stretching yourself. A lot of us run away from discomfort, but it is in discomfort that we really get to create who we are. If you think like of diamonds, they need that pressure in order for them to become these gorgeous stones that people are willing to pay millions of dollars for. And we are the same way. We operate in the same way. And I think a lot of times we rob ourselves of our ability to grow because we're so busy just being comfortably honest. We're so busy just telling ourselves the things that we want to hear so that we can stay in our little bubble. And it's when we are willing to pop that bubble, it's when we're willing to push our comfort, I call it a victimhood blanket aside, and just really focus on what can I learn about the situation that we can really grow out of it. So it can be really challenging and it can be really painful to be uncomfortably honest. And those are two of the biggest reasons why we don't do it. And if something is painful and something is uncomfortable, you're going to really struggle a lot to do it. You're going to want to really commit yourself to wanting to do this. And a lot of us are not willing and interested in making that commitment, because why would we do that? That would really force us to do something that we have the choice of running away from. So we choose to run away from it instead of actually facing it. So, why was this so hard? What was it so hard for me to understand that I struggle with punctuality? Why was it so hard for me to be honest about that with myself? Why is it so hard for you to maybe acknowledge some things about yourself that you've been convincing yourself that are not true? Why is it so hard for us? Why is it so easy for us to believe our lies that we tell each other about ourselves in order to keep up the facade of who we think we need to be? Like, why is that a thing? Well, we've been taught to focus on each other by constantly comparing ourselves to who's on our left and who's on our right. It's interesting because in school they tell you to study so you can get good grades and not to look at your neighbor, but at the same time they're constantly measuring you based on what your neighbor got, and that can be a really conflicting message. So it can be really hard for us to be in a space where we understand what it means to be uncomfortably honest with us, when we are constantly looking to pretend to be who we are not so we can fit in, so people can accept us. And we want to be accepted because we feel like if we are not accepted, we're going to be alone. And we don't want to be alone. We want to be in the fellowship and company of other people because it's what we've been taught to value. Whether you realize it or not, you need that companionship. Back when, before our time, when we were hunters and gatherers and it really took a village to raise a child in a literal context, you needed to rely on other people to do that. And that didn't go away. We still have those instincts within us. So we have that desire to be connected. And that's why it can be really hard for you to be uncomfortably honest with yourself, because that might force you to realize that you haven't been living your life based on what you want. You've been allowing other people to dictate how you live your life. And that can be really hard to come to terms with, because once again we think we are this amazing being, and when we come to terms with the fact that maybe the things that we thought we were are not true, it can be hard to face that reality. And a lot of us go insane at that. Like, a lot of people go crazy because they feel like, how can this be? Like, I thought I was this one thing and I'm not that thing. Like, how can this be a thing? Like, what am I supposed to do now? That can literally send people to the brink of insanity if you allow it. And that's why it's so important that if you're going to be brutally honest, that you are, I mean, uncomfortably honest, that you are ready for what that means, and that you are ready for the emotions that that might stir up within you and how they are going to manifest. And it can be really hard to do that when you don't know what that's going to look like, right? But if you know that you've been able to overcome over and over again, if you know that you are resilient, if you know that you are strong, if you know that you are powerful, you won't let that turn you down and keep you from getting to know yourself and unpacking that emotional baggage and getting to the root of why you feel how you feel, no matter how uncomfortable or how painful that may be. So you might be asking yourself, well, Nori, how do I start? Like, what can I do to begin this journey? Well, before I tell you that, I want to tell you a little bit about how your life is going to change once you take this on, because I just talked about how painful this process is, how uncomfortable this process is. And you might be feeling like, I don't really know if I want to go on that journey. I don't know if I'm ready, if I need to, if I should do it. And I really wanted to spend some time telling you why you should do it, why you should consider being available to yourself and to being available to being uncomfortably honest with yourself, why that is so important. So the first thing is that once you learn how to be uncomfortably honest with yourself, you're going to get to take your control back. It's just that simple. Like if you're someone that's been feeling like nothing is they're not in control of anything, everything is kind of dictating their lives, and they just feel like they're being thrown around, and you desperately need your control. You be able to do that if you learn how to be uncomfortably honest with yourself, and I'm gonna show you how. So, first, you're going to learn to see yourself for who you are without negative judgment or demeaning self talk. A lot of us hide behind negative talk. A lot of us hide behind self judgment. A lot of us hide behind these things because they justify our decision not to be who we want to be, not to unleash our full potential. So it's easier to say, I can never do this, or I'm not worthy, or all these other things, than it is to show yourself that you are worthy, than it is to do the work, than it is to face yourself, that it is to be uncomfortably honest with yourself. And we use these labels to shield ourselves from our ability to achieve what we want to achieve, to make our journey easier. And as a result, we trade in our happiness, we trade in our joy, because in order for us to continue living this facade, we have to give up who we really are. And that hurts us because we're pretending the whole time, right? So when you begin to be uncomfortably honest with yourself, you learn to see yourself for who you are. You learn to say, you know what, Nori, you're not someone that's on time. That's just their reality. It's not good, it's not bad. It's just their reality. Do you want to change that? Right? Which is the next step. By learning to see myself for who I am without thinking that I need to defend myself or thinking that something is wrong with me, I can then be in a position where I decide, do I like this or do I not like it? And can I do something about it? Right? So after you learn to see yourself for who you are without negative self judgment or negative self talk, then you'll be able to see what parts of you want to change and why. I was able to determine, well, you know what? I don't like being late. I don't like not being on time, because that means that I don't respect my time and I don't respect other people's time. And I want to respect people's time because I acknowledge that time is our most expensive currency and I want to do it justice. So, because of that, now that I know that I'm not someone that's on time, I can do something about it and I'm going to do something about it. But a lot of us don't make it to that part because we're so busy defending who we think we need to be in order to fit in order to be part of the group and be accepted and be validated. Number three, then you can take action to become the person that you want to be. So after you learn to see yourself for exactly who you are, and then after you decide that you want to change and do something about it, you can actually do it. It's easier for me to say, I've realized that I'm not someone that's on time. Therefore, I'm going to do something about that because I don't like being someone that's always tardy, because that means that when I do that, I'm not respecting people's time. People won't respect my time. And that's my most expensive currency. And I want to make sure I'm using it to the best of my ability. So I'm going to stop being late. I'm going to put systems in place to be on time. And that's an easier conversation than just saying, I'm never late. I'm always on time. I don't know what people are talking about. But it's easier for us to go on the latter because it doesn't make us think about how we act. It doesn't make us take responsibility. And that's really, really, really important. Now, will this process be painless? No. Would this process be comfortable? Absolutely not. This is a very challenging process. But you need to realize that right now, your life is also uncomfortable. is also painful. So you want to decide, is it worth it to continue living a life pretending to be someone that I'm not and be comfortable and painful and be full of pain? Or is it better for me to live the life that I want to live for myself and not and go through a process that's painful and go through a process that's uncomfortable, but at the end, I come out victorious. I come out authentically being myself. I come out without fear of self doubt, without fear of disappointments, and I just live and enjoy my life. You want to ask yourself, is the trade off worth it, right? Like, is it worth it for you to continue pretending or for you to become who you really want to be? And a lot of us don't realize that it is worth it. And for me, when I made that determination, it was challenging at first because it was so hard, but it got better with time. I got better at being able to discern what things were in alignment with who I wanted to be and what things weren't. And it was all a result of that uncomfortable honesty. Because the thing about the uncomfortable honesty is that at the beginning, it doesn't feel good. What is those candy? I think it's Sour Patch, where they're sour and then they're sweet. That's kind of what uncomfortable honesty feels like. It's like you start with this really sour feeling about, is this really who I am? I thought I was much better. And then you go to, now I can become much better. Now I can be who I think I am. And then I can be who I want to be. And it's a very liberating feeling when you get to that place because you don't need to be validated. You don't need someone to tell you what to do. For many years, I was that person that needed so much guidance from everyone for literally anything. And now I can make my decisions and I make my decisions being led by my intuition without fear. And if something doesn't go the way I would have liked it, okay, I've learned that that's not how that works, right? But that doesn't keep me from taking action. So imagine how much more happy you will be if you could say no without feeling guilty. If you could say yes only when your intuition was guiding you. And if you could wake up every morning with a smile on your face because you know that you're living your life the way you want it to be. You're walking in your purpose. Imagine what that will feel like for you. That's what's possible when you are able to be uncomfortably honest with yourself and by extension with other people. So, where do you start? I think the number one question you need to ask yourself if you want to begin being more uncomfortably honest with yourself is, what can I learn about myself from this situation right now? Every single hour of the day, minute of the day, we're going through situations. We're going through, whether they're interactions with other people, interaction with ourselves, interaction with technology, interaction with our thoughts. We're constantly going through these interactions and these situations. And if we pause for a second and ask ourselves, what can the situation teach me about myself right now? There is so much that we can learn about ourselves. That question is really powerful because it puts you in a very vulnerable space. It allows you to see outside of being defensive and to really be vulnerable with yourself, be open with yourself. It puts you in a position to give yourself permission to tell yourself that's actually not something you're good at, or you really need to work on that, or you're doing your best and that's all you can deliver. There is so much power in asking yourself this question because we're constantly defending ourselves. We constantly feel like we have to defend who we think we need to be, and that's not who we really are, but we're not really sure who we're really supposed to be. So we're all confused and we're just defending. We're just fighting for whatever needs to be fought at that moment because we have so much anger because we're tired of pretending to be something that we're not. And when you stop and ask yourself, what can this situation teach me about myself right now? You can learn about your thought patterns. You can learn about how things make you feel. You can learn about how things trigger you and lead you to act in a certain way. You can learn about how you how you respond to situations. And then you can ask yourself a deeper question once you're able to see that. And then you can ask yourself, why do I feel this way? Where does this feeling come from? And it all helps you get deeper and deeper into those layers. But you cannot be uncomfortably honest with yourself if you're not willing to be vulnerable with yourself. You don't give yourself the permission to be vulnerable with you, to be honest with you, to be real with you. And if you can't do that, then you are standing in the way of accomplishing your goals and becoming the woman or the man that you want to be. And that's why it's so important to be uncomfortably honest with ourselves, because that's what allows us to ask those questions that we've been ignoring, those questions that we've been avoiding, that are actually holding the key to who we want to be and how do we get there. So I wanted to make this video and share with you not only how you can become the person that's uncomfortably honest with themselves, but also why it is so important and helpful to you, and what are the things that are the barriers that are keeping you from achieving that. Like I mentioned before, it's not an easy process. It's not a process that happens overnight, but it is a process that's worth your attention, that's worth your determination, and that can really hold the keys to help you unleash your full potential. So if this was very helpful to you, I encourage you to check out iamhealthyfit.com to learn more about how to become unstuck and overcome your paralysis. Till next time.